Okay, so what if I told you that one of Europe's most prolific and feared serial killers, a criminal mastermind who was active for over 16 years, never actually existed? Well, this is the story of one of the most bizarre and baffling criminal cases in modern history. For 16 long years, police all across Europe were hunting a phantom, a ghost who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere all at once. She was a criminal mastermind who always left behind one single solitary clue, but was never, ever seen.
So our story really kicks into high gear with the Phantom's most brazen attack yet. It's a quiet afternoon, two police officers are just on their lunch break in their patrol car when they're ambushed. Both are shot in the head. The crime scene was, well, it was chillingly clean. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no weapon, absolutely nothing.
Well, almost nothing. A single swab from the back seat of that police car gave them their only clue, a female DNA profile. A profile that didn't belong to the victims. It belonged to Germany's most wanted ghost, a killer the press had nicknamed the woman without a face. Now, this wasn't just some isolated incident. This was the latest crime in a spree that had haunted Germany and two other countries for more than a decade. And believe me, the investigation was about to get a whole lot bigger. The Phantom's so-called criminal career stretched back 16 years, starting with a murder all the way back in 1993. From that point on, her DNA just kept popping up, at robberies, at violent home invasions, and tragically, at more murders. She was crossing international borders like they weren't even there. The profile the police put together was just a complete mess of contradictions. I mean, on one hand, she's a master of stealth who never leaves a trace, except for her DNA, which she leaves everywhere. In the rare cases there were witnesses, they often described seeing a man, even though the DNA was always female. And the criminals they interrogated, they were supposedly so terrified of her, they'd rather go to prison for life than give up her name. The manhunt got so desperate that authorities offered a massive reward, 300,000 euros for her capture. But still, absolutely nothing. The woman without a face stayed a complete and total mystery. So for 2 long years after that shooting in Heilbronn, a huge, dedicated task force hit nothing but brick walls. And then, out of the blue, in March of 2009, a very strange call came in from France. And this is where the case took a turn that, I promise you, nobody could have predicted. French investigators were working a completely separate case. They were trying to identify a burned body. To do that, they ran a DNA test on some fingerprints they lifted from an old asylum application they thought belonged to the victim. But when the results came back, they made no sense at all. And this was the impossible piece of evidence that finally cracked the entire case wide open. The fingerprints on the document clearly belonged to a man, but the DNA profile they got from those exact same prints, it belonged to a woman. And not just any woman. It was a perfect match for the Phantom. So how in the world could a man's fingerprints have a woman's DNA? This clue was so baffling, so biologically impossible, that it forced investigators to question the one piece of evidence they thought was rock solid, the DNA itself. The answer wasn't at a crime scene, it was somewhere far more ordinary. So the investigation finally started tracing the evidence itself, not the criminal. And they landed on the humble cotton swab, the tool they used to collect all this DNA. It turns out the sterile swabs being used by police forces across Europe, well, they weren't sterile at all. The Phantom of Heilbronn never existed. She was an illusion, a ghost literally created by contaminated lab equipment. The DNA that launched a 16-year manhunt across 3 countries belonged to an unsuspecting and completely innocent woman working at the factory that produced the cotton swabs. Her DNA had accidentally contaminated them before they were ever even used. This revelation sent absolute shockwaves through the German justice system. The country's most notorious criminal was a procedural error, and the real-world consequences were just devastating. The difference between the myth police had been chasing and the mundane reality was just staggering. This international criminal genius was in fact an innocent factory worker. A phantom who haunted 3 countries was really just a ghost in the machine, a simple contamination error that had snowballed into a national obsession. And what was the final bill for chasing this ghost? 16 years of investigations, millions of euros, thousands upon thousands of police hours, and it was all completely wasted on a phantom that was never there. But the real tragedy here isn't just the wasted time and money. While police were busy chasing a ghost, the actual killers of that police officer in Heilbronn,
2 neo-Nazis remained free. And many of the other murders blamed on the Phantom, they're still unsolved today. The real perpetrators likely got away with it forever.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? We treat DNA evidence like it's infallible, but this whole story is a pretty sobering reminder of how easily the search for truth can be completely derailed by one single, tiny, unseen error.